No, that's
School
great.
events.
That's weird.
No, it's great.
Can't do regular events, that's my problem.
I mean,
Yeah, they try to help out. I mean,
Tiered math intervention that like needed to put in.
you know,
yeah, because we did it at the school.
right.
Yeah.
All the kids again.
Right. Sure.
Back to the start work session. We're jargon.
Good.
No.
So I created this fancy slide presentation like last year, had it ready to display on the boards, and now that we have to live stream everything, I can't do both. So we're just gonna work everything off the old fashioned paper pencil, is what we're gonna do. So each of you have a binder. For those that were here last year, my work session, we are gonna kind of run it the same way. Got a variety of topics we're going to discuss today. Kind of talk about, every year the mayor, the governor, the president gives a state of the whatever. Kind of very similar here. We're kind of giving you a state of the Career Center. Give you some updates on some things that maybe we've already talked about via email or in person, but at the same time, bringing some other things to light as we continue to work through the ever-changing education landscape here in the state of Indiana. So we've got 7 objectives for today, and much like last year, I want this to be a interactive session. I want there to be questions. I want us to talk through this. I will expand on things as we go, but please, please, as we go throughout, interject. Ask questions, whatever needs to be done, so that way we can feel like we're really interacting throughout this. So the objectives that we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about the credentials of value and how BRCP will be able to help each one of your high schools achieve those credentials. The new funding memo came out right before Christmas break, the new CTE funding memo. We have noticed changes here. So we'll talk a little bit about those changes here at the Career Center. Every year, the Career Centers go through an auditing process, and what the Commission for Higher Education refers to as phases 1, 2, and 3. We'll compare last year's score to this year's score and share the good news with that. Also, the Commission for Higher Education always releases their 10 core indicators. Unfortunately, they don't have all 10 released, but we will dig into what I've been able to decipher and get into so far, and how not only helps us, the Career Center, but how we're helping you, and quite frankly, with some of the categories we'll discuss today, how you're helping us. We've talked about this before, but I think it's worth discussion today, excuse me, and that's a countywide work-based learning coordinator and how we would run the program. We started to have some discussions. Jody and I have already talked about this. We'll touch on it just briefly, but the discussion of our front lot and some possible options that we now have that came to me right before break. So we'll discuss those and then also look at potential enrollment trends for the upcoming school year. So as we move along, first thing we want to talk about is our phase 1 monitoring scores that we received right before break, I believe it was. So, as I mentioned, audits occur every year. Ours, they were conducted during first semester. They are digital audits, they're virtual. So they dig into the data behind the scenes, and they have a scoring rubric that they use. Since I've been here, and I know when Mr. Shaw was here too, they had never entered into phase 2, which that's what you don't want. You want to fall below the cutoff score every year. The good news I mentioned at the beginning, our risk score this year was actually lower than last year's risk score. So it's like golf. You want to have the lower the number, the better. So we improved by over 30 points. There are 54 career centers in the state. 53 of them are getting audited every year. The Hancock County Career Center starts next year, and they're number 54. We were one of 20 career centers to improve our score. So to me, that is it's a good achievement because we're only one of 20 that are improving scores. And that's a credit to what was already in place and what we continue to do to have our scores improve. In regards to the movements, yeah,
So 30 points as a percentage of improvement would be what?
so the risk scores changed. The total cutoff scores changed from last year to this year. So, for example, the cutoff score for last year was 200 to get to phase 2, and the cutoff score this year was 220. So they raised the cutoff score a little bit this year. So in regards to what 30 points is a percentage of, divide by 220. So 10 points were added to the programming category, and 16 points were removed from the MLA. Your MLA, your memorandum of your civil rights, your 504s, your special ed, those types of things that fall under the MLA. So on the next 2 pages, I provided where the scores compared to from last year. Our leadership total went down from 50 to 40. Once again, going down is good. Leadership total in the rubric tells you on the next page what is considered leadership. So we did not have any changes in key personnel within the last 2 years. Okay. Last time eligible recipient received an on-site monitoring visit, which we have not had. The changes to the consortium agreement, which we did have a change again this July, when we changed it over to having the superintendent serve as the voting board members. And then the eligible recipient meet submission deadlines for local applications, CLNA, which means we are turning everything in on time, meeting our deadlines, etc. is what they are doing. So it looks like they still gave us points within the last 2 years because I guess they're still referring to Steve as that. Now, here's the thing, like last year, I'll tell you again, they don't provide us where we fell within, where we got our points from. They just provide us the overall total score for each category. So we can do some hypothesizing to figure out where we got the points at. But it's very hard to figure out where we did not. And Angie Steinecker and I always sit down and look on things that she's familiar with, where we may have gotten points taken away and where we did not. So this year our programming total score decreased. Our fiscal total is always good. It was 0 again. Our data and accountability scores, that actually went up. So that goes back, when you go to the rubric on the second page and the things that fall under data accountability, and we'll get into this later. Number of indicators that failed to meet at least 90% of the agreed upon performance levels. We had 3 categories last year that did not meet the 90% threshold. And that was the language arts, math, and science. So that we know for a fact we can grab 10 points from there. Local recipient has successfully submitted and been approved for improvement plans for failed indicators on both the full and interim. We've got points there because we, once again, had to add improvement plans in for the English, math, and science. Remember the discussion we had last year in the work session? We wanted to focus on the areas that we can control, not so much the English, math, and science, because those are kids that are graded on with us that either come to us or never step foot in our building, but are going through a CTE concentrator in your building. Number of failed indicators that failed to meet at least 90% of the agreed upon levels for consecutive years. Once again, that's your English, math, and science. We did not have any red flag issues. We did not have any new data stack, and we met all of our submission deadlines. So once again, all of our points are coming from the top 3 things. And that is a common trend that you are seeing amongst all career centers, are those top 3 things. So that's the update on the risk scores and kind of how we change from one year to the next. In fact, our MOA total from 24-25 to 25-26 went down by 30 points. We had to make some changes on the website. We had to add some things on there so they knew exactly what they needed to do in regards to grant applications. So we updated those, which allowed our MOA total to go down too. Any questions on the risk scores or thoughts? Guys? Okay. All right, moving on. The core indicator data. This, I think, will be a little, this one is going to be a hot topic discussion, not only within career centers, but I think it'll be a point of discussion for today with us. So the first thing I want to talk about is what is the 90%? You've heard me mention it already. So we have to set a local determined performance level every year. If we set a local determined performance level of 40% of students passing language arts, 90% of that is 36. As long as our overall score breaks the 90% rule, then we have met that goal for the year. So even though we didn't get to the 100% level of 40%, the 90% rule states that as long as you get to 90% of the overall goal, you have met the goal for the year. So as we dig into this data here after a while, you're going to see, while we may not have met the overall goal, there were a couple areas that met the 90% rule. So therefore, we met the goal, we won't have to have an improvement plan. So that's the 90% rule. As of today, the 4-year graduation rate, the extended year graduation rate, and the post-program placement have not been updated by the state. We have an idea of what our post-program placement is. That is one of our stronger suits. Post-program placement, remember, is tracking students on what are they doing when they leave the career center. Are they enrolled in the military? Are they enrolled in some form of post-secondary education? Or are they working? That's a great question. How do we do that? At the end of every year, we conduct senior surveys. The senior, and we self-report. So then on those senior surveys, what we do is we then track exactly where they go, and we have to take that information and report it into the Commission for Higher Education. And we have to be very specific about where they're going. So if a kid says, I plan on going to college, we had to go back in last year, and they had to, we had to find them and tell them, where are you going to college? Then it got to the point of, okay, you're going to Ivy Tech. What are you majoring in Ivy Tech? Nursing, education. We had to be very specific with what we were reporting to the state and to the Commission for Higher Education.
What do they do?
Outside of
Score us, nothing.
That's always been the gripe that we've had is, you know, they want to track 2- and 4-year completion rates back to the high school. Well, a lot of these kids, they leave us, we don't ever see them again or hear from them again. And,
Yeah.
you know, we try to contact them.
It's very.
What's your undergraduate degree?
My undergraduate,
Your bachelor's?
math,
Math education?
math,
Math, just straight math.
straight math.
What's yours?
Social studies education with a minor in bowling.
Bachelor's?
Yeah,
No way
I just have my undergrad is in exercise science, and then I went back to school to get a certification.
Yours?
Social studies education, but my minor was a math endorsement, not bowling.
I'm trying to make, come on here, just a minute. Council.
Psychology.
Yeah,
Elementary education.
yeah, mine's mechanical engineering. So there's a group of people in this room that are quite capable, and what, half of us are not working in a field that has anything remotely to do with what the hell we went to undergrad school for? Why is this even being measured? I mean, I would submit that I do a pretty decent job in my current profession. My undergrad was no indicator that this is what I was going to do, right?
Outside of tracking the
Preaching to
data,
the choir.
Yeah, that's
outside of tracking the data and comparing you to other career centers in the state, there's not a lot that they do.
not everything that matters measured. Matters.
So like last year, I was able to provide you a secondary roll-up to see exactly where we stood amongst all the career centers. Can't provide that yet because they haven't finished all the data.
Okay, I'll quit.
Oh, you're good. So I pulled this out. This is in your packet right here. This is the core indicator data for 22-23 all the way through 25-26. You will notice my handwritten, very legible writing under ACTED 24-25. That's where, these are the numbers that we know for sure right now. Okay? This is, and the items have been included in your packet, so I've also included every one of these in here so you can see how we did. Okay? So for example, 2S1. 2S1 is academic proficiency in language arts. That is how every student that has either come to the Career Center or completed at least one CTE concentrator, ag, business, whatever other CTE concentrator at your school, these juniors last year, when they took the SAT, we had an average of 38.43. Now, we didn't meet the local DPL of 42.18, but think of the 90% rule. We met that 90% rule.
Remind me what DPL is.
Determined performance level. So Jed Vance and Chris Deaton every year require us to set local determined performance levels. They have to be greater than the year previous. What some career centers were doing, and I'm not gonna lie, we were too, improvement was 0.01. That's improvement. Some were doing that for every single one across the board, 0.01 from 1 to 10. And the state jumped in and said, we're taking your determined performance levels over from here. So our DPLs for 24-25 and 25-26 were set by the state. So the best way to look at it is if you look at 3S1, 91.99 for this year, or for 24-25, 93.99 for 25-26. So on average, they moved us up 1 to 2%, depending on the history of how we did for each one of them. So 2S1, we won't have to write an improvement plan for this year. So that's the first time we haven't had to do one since 22-23, which is good. Actually, 21-22. 2S2 and 2S3, we were lower than the year previous. That's math and biology. We will have to write an interim improvement plan, a full improvement plan, like we have discussed in the past. But we're going to focus on the 5 areas at the bottom that mean the most to us. Post-program placement, once again, I don't have the numbers on that. The initial numbers show we're going to meet that goal just based off where we're at, but it hasn't been finalized. Here are the areas that have jumped forward as a concern for me this year. 4S1, non-traditional program concentration. You will see that we are at 42.93 for the year, for last year. Non-traditional program concentration is females in welding, males in nursing, males in human social services, ed professions. So somebody doing something that is not considered traditional.
Is it only based on gender?
No, it's not only based on.
There's other
things, and that's in this packet also as we go throughout it. But that is the biggest factor in it. But what is happening is, by us adding human social services in 23-24, which is a female-dominated field in social work, and then adding ed professions in 24-25, which for the most part is female-dominated. There are males that are taking it, but what's happening is we don't have males taking ed professions. We have 2 males in human social services this year and had 1 the year previous. And then by adding a second welding class this year in 25-26, we saw the number of females increase for 25-26 in welding. My concern though, moving forward, is because we have so many fields or programs that are considered male and female dominated, and by adding these 2 female dominated programs the last 2 years, we are going to have to go back to some things that have been done in the past and try to promote gender specific. I know it's not just gender, but gender is the one that is the big thing on how we can get these students interested in programs that are dominated by the opposite gender. So nursing is another example. CCMA has 1 student, 1 male student. CNA has 2 male students in it.
Well, I mean, that's the point. Like, for us, it's easy to say, this is irrelevant. This doesn't make sense to have this measured. but for him, it's one of the ways he's evaluated, so it's like, you know.
And then now, down the bottom of this page, I put in writing, last year they provided differently, but only BRCP. So for example, 42.93 is every single student in Shelby County that has either come to the Career Center or is in some form of a CT concentrator at your high schools. At the bottom is, if you take your kids out that don't come to the Career Center, or just our Career Center numbers.
So the numbers in here represent
Everybody.
their own kids
Yes.
as well.
Everybody, yes. The numbers at the bottom represent just us. So we only had 28% of our student body last year, senior cohort, because key monies are based off cohorts, that were in a non-traditional program. So
I think the question that I would have, this is irrelevant to our data, sorry.
it's fine.
So the question that I would have for the people who, is this a federal standard because of the Perkins dollars, or is this a state?
It's federal because of Perkins,
Okay.
because it's Perkins 5.
Well, that explains a little bit more then, because I guess my question is like, what does it tell us if we don't have a lot of success with females going into welding or males going into nursing? What does that data tell us? I don't think it tells us anything. I think it may lead to some assumptions, but I don't think it in itself tells us anything.
Outside of me having to now write an interim improvement plan
I was gonna say,
for
no
the rest of
funding,
this year and full improvement plan for next year.
it won't reduce funding or anything, right?
No, it will not reduce funding. It's just, what it is, it's an improvement, no, it's not, so the funding from Perkins, if you remember, is from the number of students ages 5 to 17 in Shelby County that attend school, not necessarily within Shelby County, but just reside in Shelby County. And then that same group that is considered living in poverty or below the poverty line. And 24-25's funding was cut by $20,000 because we still have the same amount of students ages 5 to 17, but we had fewer of those students living in poverty. We won't know that number for a couple of months.
In 4S1, our adherence to their expectation doesn't influence the Perkins funding.
None of these influence the Perkins funding. None of these.
So the worst outcome would be,
Right improvement plans.
right, we'll try to do better.
Yes.
That's my point. It's almost like, so what?
Yeah, I mean,
That's basically what it was.
Worry about having kids in the programs.
So, yeah.
That's what we did with it.
Yeah.
yeah, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay, we promise to try and do better.
Thank you.
Live my whole life. We'll do it again until the next time.
So that's the overall snapshot of all the data. And I included all the data that we have access to now for each one of the programs that I've provided to you. It breaks down by all kinds of subcategories all the way throughout. It even breaks down by CT concentrator is what it does. So for example, the 2S1, I won't go through every one of these, but for the 2S1, you see all the subcategories of who is performing well. And that's one of the things in our CLNA that we've discovered in our CLNA, the School Improvement Plan on Steroids. And yes, I said School Improvement Plan on Steroids. We have discovered that our females are the one that is not performing as well in a lot of areas. And Angie Steinecker mentioned in the past, they used to go to Women of Workforce Day, where they would encourage females to come to the Career Center. And that's something we've talked about, possibly bringing back once again, part of the improvement plan that we have to do. And then as you go throughout, it talks about how every CP concentrator is doing in each one of these categories, each one of these areas also.
That'd be the question I would ask. I think I've asked in the past, from your seat, your perspective.
Yep.
Well, these measures, which ones are the ones that you think do matter? That you do zone in on?
That's a great question. The ones that matter the most to us are the post-secondary placement, the post-secondary or getting their credentials or their certification when they leave here, earning at least 9 or more dual credits while they are here, and getting their work-based learning. They're 75 plus hours.
There's 5S1, 2, 3.
5S1, 2, and 3, and the 3S1, the post-secondary placement. Is the 4S1 a concern? Yes, absolutely. Should we be targeting specific genders for each one? Yes, we should. But the 4 that we can, I think, really control the most are the 4 that I mentioned. 3S1, 5S1, 5S2, and 5S3. Now, kind of breaking that down just a little bit more, we did see a drop this year in the post-secondary credentials, 5S1, the certifications. Overall, as a county, we were 51.28, which means we are not within our 90% rule, so we're going to have to write an improvement plan. But at the Career Center, 73% of our kids are in certification. So it's almost like, okay, I have to go back to you and say, okay, well, how are you going to get certifications in your building? But then if you flip it back on the other side, I can tell you why these numbers are down from last year. And that's because our diesel program had only 1 or 2 of 20 some students earn a certification last year. That's huge. And then our auto service numbers were down. Our criminal justice numbers were down. Focus on criminal justice just for the moment. That same criminal justice certification that they did not pass last year, which is dispatch, all 7 of them passed it this year. So there's going to be an improvement already in that score, in that area. So that's 5S1's the other improvement plan that we're going to have to write. The other 2, post-secondary dual credits and the work-based learning, we're good. We're down a little bit. I don't like how we're down a little bit, especially the dual credits, but I can rehash what I just said on why our dual credits were down. So, okay, that's it on the data. Anything else? Okay. Much like last year, I just want to talk a little bit about our enrollment trends and where we are. 24-25, we ended the year at 369, which was down 43 students in count day. From October of 24, October 1 of 24, we ended the year 43 students down from count day. What that means for you guys, you still got all your CT funding regardless of whether you were 369 or 412. Your CT funding comes on count day. It doesn't come separate from that. Right now, as of today, we are at 380. Count day was 405. I will tell you the 380 drop. Most of these students that have left since count day either are graduating early or have been disciplined and are not returning. Those are the 2 reasons why they drop, because at the Career Center, they cannot drop a semester and go back to their home sending school if they want to return next year. So if they are in a program and they plan on staying and want those certifications and dual credits in order to be able to graduate, especially with our current sophomores, juniors, and seniors, they've got to stay the whole year. Check the box. So we are ahead of schedule compared to where we were at last year, and that's the reason why the drop from count day to now is because of the graduated earlier reasons.
Is a raw number the right metric to use, or should we correlate it to percentage of total APM across the 4 districts? Case in point, all of us are experiencing a declining rates, right?
Yep.
So 380 as a percentage of today's APM, I think it'd be more meaningful for me when I compare it to say next year, hey, we're down at 375. Yeah, but it's 375 of an overall smaller number. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, so
Like the pool of candidates gets smaller on our home campus every year. So just tracking the raw numbers, maybe a misnomer.
Yeah,
Right.
so I think, a good side by side would be 5-year trend data, grades 9 through 12 county
Yes.
compared to enrollment trend at BRCP.
Right.
Yeah.
It could very well be that 360 kids 2 years from now. That's a higher percentage of the overall kids that could
The
opt in.
denominator is getting smaller.
Let's look at
That's
the
what,
percentage
yeah,
of
that's,
ATM.
right.
Mass, look at the percentage of your ATM.
Yeah, right? It's just the raw numbers. Okay, I mean.
And also, so when I do about your CT funding and where you're at, we take a look at your count day numbers from one year to the next. And that shows you where you are and what you're sending to the Career Center. And I know we've already talked about that publicly and privately about where you're at number-wise for each one of your corporations, whether you're maintaining or whether you're dropping.
Every one of us getting smaller. You.
He went up this year.
Just, yeah, it's okay.
You're about
Smaller.
Yeah.
That's my point, right? Like the overall pool of possible is getting smaller each year.
Yes, the overall pool is getting smaller. On the other side of that, though, with the new credentials of value and the new seals, while the pool may be getting smaller, I still anticipate our enrollment to maintain moving forward because some of these kids are going to need us in order to graduate.
Yeah, I understand it, but what I'm saying, let's say you stay at 380 next year.
Yep.
Hey, we help serve, right? Now, actually, you did a much better job of recruiting kids
Correct.
in because you've got 380 of a smaller denominator, right? So the percentage of participation goes up.
That's correct.
I think you're getting full credit for what you're doing. Is what I'm really, not very eloquent job of saying,
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
right?
I agree that I think it's always gonna be, these programs should still stay solid or maybe see a little growth because of what our students are gonna need in the next few years, especially once new requirements kick in. So be anxious to watch that.
I will too, and if you go to the last page on the enrollments, I think you're starting to see a glimpse a little bit. And this is just returning student enrollment. So last year, when we were able to hold the meeting at the end of January, we had a better idea of where we were in regards to new students coming. The new student application just opened last week, so we don't have any preliminary numbers really to get to that point. But the positive is this: we had 213 kids that were eligible to return next year. 191 of them are coming back, 91.4%. It's down just a tick from last year. But the fact that I told Angie and Colin that we are still bringing 91% of our kids back means we are doing something right at the Career Center for these kids to want to continue to come. What I'm also encouraged by is the changes we made in the courses we offered last year when we split CNA and CCMA. The fact that we have so many kids moving to CCMA capstone next year, and it's already full, we've shut it out. We're not allowing any kids to go into the capstone next year, which means they went through CCMA this year with Tanya, and all of them are coming back next year. Then our welding capstone. So these are first year kids that are with James Weimer and Dalton Boston. We have 61 kids that are in first year. Of those 61, I believe we have 7 seniors. So we have 47 of the 54 coming back to welding capstone next year. So by adding a second class and quote unquote getting more bang for our buck, because welding provided more than what diesel was providing, that's the success I'm seeing there. Obviously, you have some concerns in a couple of the programs, and I know we've talked about being patient with a couple of them, and we will continue to be patient next year. But my patience level will continue to move if our numbers don't adjust like they should. I am encouraged by the social and community services capstone. She has 9 eligible to return next year, and she has 6 coming back. Ed Professions capstone has all of her kids coming back next year. So we have there are some good things that are happening and that we're seeing. We'll talk about work-based learning later, but we've got 25 kids that are here that are moving into work-based learning next year. So there's some positives with the enrollment. There's some positives. See what else I've got here.
Oh, would now be the time to ask about discussion.
Yes, there had been some discussion. Yeah, it's one of these. Yeah. So I had some discussions with another school corporation about possibly coming. I have followed up with them on a couple different occasions, finally heard back from them yesterday. due to our time frame of when we accept applications, and we cut it off right before spring break, I'm still encouraging them to want to come next year, but the way it's looking, maybe the 27, 28 school year at this point. I've still invited them to come do a tour. I even told them in our meeting that we would make sure they had spots available for them too. But we had to move quickly because programs filled up quickly in the process.
Kids we talking about, actually.
We're talking anywhere between 25 and 30 kids. Is what it would be. And the current practice would have been that they would be charged the average student cost, like we don't. So that's where we are with that. I'll try to encourage them again here, but if they don't want to wait till 27, 28, that's fine too. But we'd love to have them next year, process. So that's the update on that one. Okay. Good. Enrollment trends, we talked about some of the positives. I do want to talk about a couple of the concerns. We do have more students wanting to switch programs this year compared to this time last year. Colin and I, we talked yesterday, we're going to be speaking with those students this week, just a more of a survey, hey, why do you want to move? Some of the indications are I didn't get my first program last year and I have priority, so I want to go to that program. We have 40 current first-year students wanting to switch programs compared to 42 from last year. When you look at that, you say CNA has the most, what's going on in CNA? They're actually following the pathway. They're moving to CCNA is what they're doing. So they're staying within the cluster. It's not like they're all leaving the health career cluster and moving to a totally different cluster. They're staying within that pathway. And then you saw the rest of them want to switch programs, the rest of the programs that are there. So we'll continue to see what we have. We're going to see if we can see decline from programs that have 2 consecutive years worth of decline in enrollment, and we'll continue to make adjustments and see what we can do to address those programs. If we need to look at additional programs moving forward. All right. Next thing, CT funding memo and funding update for next year. So when that was released, back before Christmas break, and I worked on it over break, we saw some changes within our programs. So programs are funded in categories of high, moderate, and less than moderate, or high, moderate, low. The state has moved towards a top jobs methodology, which is designed to look at trends across the state, openings in those areas, if there's a large increase or large openings in those specific fields, and the type of degree that is required for those. And that helped drive their determination with funding for this upcoming year. We had criminal justice and fire and rescue move from moderate to high. If you recall, we did win the appeal back in the fall of moving criminal justice from moderate to high for this year. After I had appealed in the spring, and now it's officially high. So what that means funding wise for them is if they had stayed moderate for next year, they were going to be $398 a credit hour. They're now $712 a credit hour. So there's an increase of $314 per credit hour for first year students, and then a $472 increase per credit hour for capstone students. So we're getting money there, which is good. However, on the opposite side of this, auto collision, social and community services went from high to moderate. So they lost $311 per credit hour for first year students, and are losing $466 per credit hour for capstone students. The one that is really going to hurt us is culinary arts. The state has said they are going to go from moderate funding to less than moderate funding, using the Flames methodology. So you're talking a decrease of $198 a credit hour for first year students and a $298 decrease per credit hour for capstone students. There is a potential funding loss next year per credit hour of $487 based off all these changes. We have to find a way to maximize our enrollment in those programs. We were full in culinary this year at moderate levels. Got to find a way to try to keep that as full as possible to help offset that.
We have 40 kids.
We have 40 kids in it, and we've got right now 9 of the first year kids coming back next year. So we've got to hope for really high first year numbers of culinary kids coming in to offset that. Welding, which I was shocked by, welding did not move down, but the CHE has said it's very close to moving to a moderate level, which to me makes absolutely 0 sense. But when you go into the top jobs methodology, and I've included that on the next slide, I'm going to send the digital version to you guys later. They have welding broken out into very specific categories. So where a pipe fitter might be considered a rating of a 5, there may be a septic guy that may be considered a rating of a 3. And so then they lump that all together, and that's where they get the rating at moving forward. 2 new pathways are being added for this upcoming year. That's AI, machine learning, and data analytics. Whether we like it or not, AI is here and AI is second. These are, as I mentioned, high value programs. I mentioned it earlier. This is something that you may have to explore in the future, especially if it's considered a high value program and we're trying to maximize our funding as much as possible with that aspect of it. All the other programs stay the same. And if we add electrical trades for next year, that will be considered a high value program too. So that will help offset a little bit of the loss if we add electrical trades. And the numbers allow us to get to that point next year. Right now we got, I think it was 5 that are current students want to move to electrical next year. So the numbers are positive. We'll see what the new students want. So, and as you go throughout the packet, I just listed, I gave you copies of the memos, and then I highlighted all the programs, so they are here. I highlighted all the programs that we offer and what the funding level will be for next year. So it's a rather large packet, but it's wanted you to see where every single program and what we offer for next year. If it's not highlighted, that means we don't offer the program.
You have interest in AI?
I think it's worth exploring.
What's the benefit or job field of an AI pathway? I mean,
Outside of it aligning with what the current job trends are saying, their thought of what a job, what AI job might look like in the future. They, outside of them telling us they're adding these programs, they never said specifically why, what the benefit is of adding it. Maybe.
Not here, of course.
Not gonna get a well water pipe probably. Yeah.
I got 2 miles I'm trying to go into.
The thing about the AI or the technical based thing, I would wonder, student that would be attracted to that, is that a student that would leave my home campus for half a day to come here to take that? I'm not sure he or she would.
I just,
You know what I
because
mean?
it's a new course title, I'm just very curious in what the AI content was.
That has not been released in the other.
I'm just very curious about what the training is for that.
Yeah. They have not released that information. They're putting the cart before the horse.
Electrical also. Do you have an interest in?
Electrical trades?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so
We've got that on, we've already approved that.
we've approved it for the offerings, and then we'll see where numbers at in March, determine if we add it to the
Interest level to see the March.
Yeah, so the deadline will end March 12th. I do too. Yeah, I do too. And we've already, set aside some funding for that, and other sources to get us going if we need to for election. Yeah, I do too. Yep. I do too. Okay, moving on, credentials of value.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
The credentials of value, we spent a lot of time with our staff on instructor workday January 2nd, really honing in on the new diploma and what we believe the Career Center could offer the sending schools to help them. We believe that could we help in the enrollment seal? Yes. But we believe our biggest focus that we're going to be able to help all of the kids that come here will be the employment honors and the employment honors plus seal. The first packet I gave you are a list of all the credentials of value in the state. That as of December, this is what they are saying they're going to use. Now, I know we're all shocked when I make this statement. They're going to change the credential of value list. They're going to update it. And they're going to change the values on it. Once again, they use the top jobs methodology to help determine these credentials of value. As you go throughout that packet, Angie Steinecker, I had tasked to get you back in October of how does every single program relate and connect to these credentials of value, and what can we do to help these kids if they're getting the employment honors and employment honors plus seal. So in your binder is a 3-page document that Angie went through and worked on not only the employment honors seal, but the employment honors plus seal to get what we can. I have been in contact consistently with Sam Rourke of the CHE, he's the assistant commissioner, to see what we can do about adding more credentials. The one area that we're still working through is ed professions. But as of last week, all of our other programs have at least some certification or credential that they will be able to earn. Or they'll be able to earn the CT, Certificate of Training through Ivy Tech, or the TC, the Technical Certificate through Ivy Tech. So Angie went through this, worked through every single thing that we could find. We feel like we are in really good shape with where we are, with what we're going to be able to offer in our schools. We know obviously there's funding attached with these seals. You know, that's what will be pushed to get these kids to the seals, whether it's the current sophomores, junior, seniors, or obviously the freshmen that are now having to go that route. I could be wrong. I think you're going to see 80% of the kids just get the regular seal, and your top end kids get your plus seals. I could be wrong, and it could be more going towards the plus seal route. I think you're going to have kids that are not have any idea what seal they're on. They're just going to try to figure out what they need. But I think we're going to be able to help with getting those seals, especially the employment seals. Okay. So, thoughts or questions? All right. We talked a little bit about this last year, just briefly, but I'd like to revisit this conversation of a countywide work-based learning program. The person would be housed in Blue River Career Programs, and you're looking right now, it would be Ray Shepard. Everything would funnel through us, and here are some of the positives. I'm not going to go through every single bullet point, but I want to hit some of the positives. One, it becomes one main point of contact for anyone and everyone. So that way we don't have different points of contact, different type of people. Ray has been in the community for eons and has contact upon contact upon contact. We know from talking to employers, they would prefer to have one main point of contact also. Instead of who do I talk to, who do I reach out to, who do I go here? These students can earn 2 or 3 high school credits depending on their schedule. It allows flexible scheduling for the sending schools. We reduced the amount of class time they had to have this year from 2 days to 1 day. So we gave them more experience out in the field, is what they did. You could even go if you wanted to. For example, I'll use my son, he's in work-based learning. They don't have class. They don't ever meet for class. They still have assignments they have to complete. It's still assigned to do a classroom. They still have to meet with the teacher every once in a while. But they technically don't have to meet with class. If the students did not want to come to the Career Center for 1 day a week, we would propose that classes could be held at the sending school, and that work-based learning coordinator could come to your school and meet with the kids there. As I mentioned, it already satisfies, it helped with the Employment Honors Plus, because they have to have 650 hours. They can be over up to 3 experiences, not just one. They can be in different pathways. And the Commission for Higher Education is on record saying it doesn't have to be in their pathway. As long as they're working, that's all that matters. So, the example I teach with all of your high school kids when I went and visited them is, we had a girl that went through construction for 2 years. As a senior, she wanted to do work-based learning, and now she's a manager at McDonald's. Some of the kids scoffed at that, and I said, she's learning leadership experience at 17, 18 years old, and she's gonna be able to carry on when she gets older. And the state's like, hey, she's getting multiple experiences, she's getting multiple pathway options. It works for this, okay? I think this would be a benefit. I think, in my opinion, it would help everybody across the board to get us going in that direction. It can be a model of co-op, WBL, CEI, something that's recognized by the state of Indiana. It just gives one point of contact. Don't know how much longer Ray wants to do this, but I know he wants the full-time aspect again and wants to be involved in doing more full-time stuff. I'll open it for you.
Discussion
You think-
about having something to do with part-time employees.
You're thinking it's between the 4 of us that we have enough numbers to support that.
I think, yes, you would, because we are at 25 right now just wanting to do it.
Okay.
And that's not without new students wanting to become WBL next year. And we were at about 25 this time last year before the new students came in. And we picked up almost 15 kids.
Yeah, I know the numbers are gonna grow. I know right now we're doing some, but not a lot. But
Yeah.
I don't know our numbers off the top of my head either, so that's kind of it's kind of my concern with this too.
I understand. Yeah, absolutely.
I definitely want to explore it. So like, I don't know. I don't know what my counselors are doing in terms of WBL. I can't speak exactly to that, but like, give you an example. So we just hired our first student daycare worker, and I think they set up some sort of WBL program for her, so she's getting credit and we're able to compensate her. But I don't know if the counselor's overseeing that, signing off on it, or if we need to do something
My
different.
understanding is that your counselor, and I know the situation you're talking about, my understanding is your counselor oversees.
Okay, which I'm not opposed to that, but I don't know that they need to be overseeing a whole bunch of kids, which is where I think we're gonna end up in the next year or two. So I think we do need to continue to take a look at that for sure.
What would the max number be? Let's just say 3 years down the road, we really start seeing this grow. How many students do you think this would be capped at?
We're at 40, I'm gonna give you a long-winded answer, Matt. We were at 40 this year on a different contracted day for Mr. Shepler. If he was at a full-time contracted day, I would cap it close to 60. Anywhere between 50 and 60 is what I would cap it at.
You would base that on what?
Based off current trends, based off the numbers that are continuing to increase. We went from 25 and 24, 25 to 40 this year in 25, 26. So if you,
We need to find.
we do.
So it's the determinant of the size of the program, the number of kids who are interested, or is it the number of opportunities that exist for them to go to? my concern is we won't find enough employment.
I've said all along, I think, you know,
You don't say it.
you know, you're talking about 4 or 5 high schools looking for, you know, we replaced a large number of our juniors and seniors.
I would agree with that statement.
That's kind of my, but then I can come back and argue too, that having one common contact could maybe help that. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking about how we, you know, would schedule that and all kinds of things like that. So I think we need more, I think we need to talk a little more about this. And I do want to know more about our numbers and,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. Yeah.
My concern is that what limit the size of the program number of kids. It's being able to place them. I remember a conversation with the folks at Ball State about student teaching. I asked them one time, why do you wait until a kid's a junior to put them in a classroom? And the candid answer was, we can't find enough schools that will take them to do anything other. Right? So like, I think that's applicable here.
Yeah.
So in terms of the model, I'll speak to that just a tad. So at Patoka Valley Career Center, the model sounds similar to what you described in that. So we had a work-based learning coordinator that had an office, but they did not have a classroom. So they went around and met with students at their place of employment or at their sending high school to do check-ins, and they had Google Classroom. So I think you can, because this is just my opinion too, I don't know that a draw for a kid into a work-based learning program is to have to go to a classroom for 1 or 2 days a week. I think that is the opposite reason they want to do work-based learning, which is, quite frankly, in some cases, to get out of school and get a job and make some money. And if we can provide them credit and they can get compensated, then it's a win all the way around. So I think in my opinion, I think the model probably needs to begin to shift regardless of if we expand or not, because I think that's what kids want. And I think that could then lead to additional enrollment. And I don't know, maybe I'm too optimistic. I've been told that a few times, but I don't, you know, you think about the numbers of juniors and seniors we have. Not all of them are going to want work-based learning experience, but let's just say that it's 30%. You know, so you're talking about 150, 200 kids in the county, or maybe, you know, for you, it could be Hancock County, or it could be another neighboring county. I think there's opportunities there, and I think with a little coordination and effort from the person in charge of that to go out to these businesses in the summer and say, hey, if I have kids interested in this, how many would you be willing? I think there's opportunities there for kids who are interested.
I think there are too, but like anything else, always run into some things where some are kind of shy to take kids because there's only so much they want to do in some cases. So, I mean, but we've had some success with it already. So, I mean, I do think it does take some coordination, some work, and some, you know, some collaboration with businesses to kind of say, hey, here's what we think this could look like for a student. How can we match that? And then you kind of go from there. So, I mean, it's big. I mean,
in an industrialized setting, manufacturing setting, under 18 is going to be an obstacle. Knopf, Ryobi, et cetera, are going to be very reluctant to bring a 17-year-old kid into the shop floor, which is dangerous. And there's liability there. You know, that's not to say that their answer is 0. Have we had discussions with them about that?
Ray has had discussions with some, and there's still that pushback.
we've had some too, like I said, we've had some
And
success.
I understand it from their perspective, like,
Well-
having worked in an industrial setting, I absolutely understand your
firm, student.
So,
We had high school.
Yeah.
you know, this is a crucial point that we made our legislative body aware of, is that you want every kid to get WBL, but many of our businesses won't allow it.
Right.
And so we talked to them because, of course, they've gone to Sweden and they like the Swedish model.
That's exactly
where
what I
they
told
don't,
my staff on January 2nd.
they don't, they do not have the same labor laws that we do.
Right.
And so we need exceptions to those, or businesses need exceptions to those if they're going to employ our 16, 17-year-olds for some
I spent a decade working in an oil refinery Julia, them on the line, there is no way in the world we would allow a high school kid into that setting. I mean, they barely allowed us as adults because people died.
Yeah.
There's no way we're putting a junior or senior in high school in that place. No way.
So you're thinking about this for next year though, right? I mean, or are you thinking long range, like, let's do some more exploring because really WBL is gonna be picking up in the next couple of years.
Yep.
So that's kind of,
Yep. So it's twofold.
Mhm.
On the money side of it, we've already appropriated for him to go full-time for next year, based off of numbers. I would like to see what numbers that we have coming here, and then add that to anything that you guys may be adding and doing within your school.
it makes sense.
And if the numbers allow that, then I think it's worth a discussion. If the numbers don't allow it, then I say let's move to 27, 28 and really work to refine that and see how we can get it really going and giving us time to work at it instead of trying to push a square peg into a round hole right now.
It's mid-tier.
Yeah.
Our kids are probably more apt to go to Marion County, Cobb County, or Johnson for some of these experiences because we're local. Yeah, lots.
And I
That
will
makes
tell
sense,
you,
too.
Ray has some of his kids right now that are going outside of the county. Yeah, so he's got some of your kids that he's had to go down into the areas of Indianapolis that aren't exactly conducive.
Those are good.
Well, the other concern with that too is if we have one instructor, and let's say this say gets up to 60, that's hard for that's hard for one person to get around and check on them, because
Yeah.
to do it right, that's how it needs to be set
Yeah.
up, so.
And
you know,
we're making
that's
changes,
what
and I'm making change, Ray and I are working through some changes
Yeah.
already for next year to make sure kids have jobs and placements either before they leave at the end of the school year or already starting that process instead of waiting until August. And we have an application now, and the kids have to fill out the application. It's instructors have sections they have to fill out, and he sits down with every one of these kids. So we're making some of those changes already to help them.
That's good. Yeah, 'cause that's why we started small, just because we knew it was gonna have to,
Yeah.
see how it grows.
Exactly.
And then you go from there, make some adjustments, so.
I don't think we should ban it right now.
I agree.
Look in.
Hey, absolutely, there's a lot of us. I really do.
Jeremy, help me understand.
Yeah.
When we have kids do that, are they finding their own employment?
They're not supposed to, no. That is supposed to be Ray's job.
Okay. Can they find their own
Well, that's what they
employment?
can, that's what I'm saying.
They could find their own employment, but the preference would be that Ray has his wealth of contact knowledge to use to help him find, or help him or her find a job, basically, because he actually interviews every single kid and looks at their pathway, what they're wanting to do, and he tries to use that as a knowledge to help them find a job. Now, there have been some kids this year that have found jobs on their own.
Give me an example of something.
We have a student who decided to go into landscape. And that was in the welding pathway. And then we had another student who started in CNA, quit her job, and now found her own job at Cracker Barrel. So those are two examples that I can think of right off the top of my head.
So there's nothing that stops it. What stops the student from getting a job and then converting that to a work-based learning?
There's nothing specific right now that stops it, no. But that's what we're trying to change and put into place, is to have that kid be placed in an area that either A, fits in their pathway, or something that maybe Ray can't find, because the money doesn't matter if it's WBL or CEI, which is Career Exploration Internship. The funding doesn't matter. It's the kids that don't have a pathway, a CT pathway to begin with, that are coming to us as seniors, where the funding matters. So if you had a kid who has no pathway whatsoever and is relying on us to get that pathway, and you place them at Cracker Barrel, you're only getting $150 per kid because it's considered a co-op. And there's more extensive work that has to be done. But yet, if you have a kid that come to us that was in the ag concentrator, and they go and work for Fisher seeds, then that's a pathway and you're getting more funding for that aspect of it.
I think it's worth keeping an eye on and just seeing,
I'll continue to look at numbers and.
yeah.
Yep, we'll see how numbers go. We'll revisit, probably after enrollment closes here. We'll have conversations with those that are offering WBL and seeing where your numbers are at before we decide if it's something we want to pursue moving forward for next year or wait another year to really develop it. All right, and then some of these, last part is just kind of my visions and goals moving forward. Some are the same as last year. I added some things that have already happened. So for example, on the first page, number 2 and number 3, I talked last year about that community day. That will happen next school year. Number 3, the yearly advisory committee luncheon, that will be happening this spring. That is on my to-do list to get done. I talked last year about wanting to add a new program. We're hoping that will be electrical trades. And then number 6, actually I'm going to skip 5 and come to 6. 6, continue to look for grant opportunities. I talked about this last year. Just in that time, since then, we've received grants totaling over $170,000 for funding. Our fire and rescue EMT program received a $35,000 grant from the Perkins Reserve Grant to use towards that. And then we're continuing to look for other grant opportunities to fund these programs. Number 5, I mentioned this in my objectives. Jody and I have been speaking, and it's okay if I talk about this. I was contacted by a couple gentlemen from Allies Commercial Realty that specialize in buying commercial lots. Somehow, some way, they got tipped off or knew about the lot over here. They partnered with a group called Ash Union that does a lot of digging into situations like ours, where we have been drug along for a long time and with that lot out front.
It's remediated.
It is remediated, yes. They haven't remediated on it 2 or 3 years, if I'm correct, in that instance. And so now what they're exploring is the possibility of digging in and finalizing this situation, finishing this situation out, where they would work with Frank West, Mike Reeder. Those were names I gave them. They're like, oh yeah, we know them. We know exactly who they are. To where they would move the process along quicker with IDEM to try to close this sucker out. They would want to buy the lot from us. And in return, if they buy the lot from us, I would still want some say of what goes out there in front with that. And they understood, and they were receptive with that.
Can you give the Cliff Notes version for all of us?
Yes.
Some of us were not here.
Yep.
And that was being cleaned up. Dealt with facts.
Yep, so the lot out front is where the old Career Center used to sit. Back in the late 2000s, there was some remediation that started to occur on that lot because of some things that they were considered harmful to the environment. And they've been doing some remediation for many years. It was really heavy and extensive from the late 2000s to about the mid 2010s, late 2010s. Since that point, IDEM has went through obviously different commissioners. It has changed hands several times. We partner with our several different insurances through this. We have to pay for the remediation of every time they do a remediation. And then Jody and Danny before would get involved, Danny Harold would get involved to get the reimbursements taken care of. We are pretty close to having all of the reimbursements taken care of out front, but I had a meeting about 2 or 3 weeks after I started, July of 24, with Frank and Mike, and got the same runaround that I think it's been going on for years. And that is, well, we're still working on it. And IDEM is, they're getting close to being done. And we'll let you know when it's done, but we're not ready for it to be done. But nothing ever happens out there. That hasn't happened in now almost 2 years that I've been here, outside of a fence that may fall occasionally. And I get called on from the city about a fence being down.
Does the parcel have a clean bill of health? So if we were just
Currently, no, because the IDEM is still in control. It's still under the investigation.
This is my understanding so I've sat in on I think 2, maybe 3 of those updates in my time here. My understanding is that no matter what remediation is done, there will be limited restrictions on that property. So
So
there
anything residential.
can't be residential, can't be a school. But there are commercial options, there's industrial options, there's other options available to potential buyers. So there's a value to the property, but it will have some restrictions on it.
Recall that. And Allies Commercial Realty and Ash Union is aware.
Yeah.
So there's some movement. Very, very, very cautiously.
Be a transportation center.
I mean, we're always willing to talk about things like that. No, I don't. Well, they're ideal, but I'm thinking about what could go there. I remember hearing the same thing. I've heard different stories since I've been here in my 4 years, but I do remember thinking there could be some kind of a business, but I do remember there would be some restrictions to it, so. Same story.
That was my understanding.
I assume there are ways to write into an agreement that it's always us liabilities.
Oh, most definitely,
It's
yeah.
like when you sell something very fuel tank.
Before the school.
So the meetings are starting to happen. They had some questions that I passed on to Jody. She got those answered for me. I sent those back to them. I'm scheduled to meet with them later this week. There is no discussion right now. It's more just about trying to get this moving.
What size is that piece of land?
Gosh.
I don't know.
Okay, it'll bump right up our parking lot.
It goes to the south to like the fence line, right?
Yeah, that's also, yeah. So, I'll keep you guys in the loop.
I still love the idea, and I brought this up before, a strip mall that has a restaurant for culinary arts and a salon for cosmetology. That's fine. We gotta find a commercial developer
Can't be a
that will
school.
develop.
That's true, right?
That's
So it
fine.
could be it's a studio.
That's my vote. Second.
Yeah, right.
Second.
So I'll keep you guys in the loop on that one, and I'll let you know where we proceed on that. We've talked about trying to expand CT programming through different methods. In the same traditional methods where we're looking for space around here. I do want to talk real briefly. I did have a conversation with KLR Online Certifications. They have partnered with schools and just career centers around the state. They have explored the possibility of, and I've talked with them about this possibility of adding dental and vet tech as programs that would run through the service center. So let me kind of give you let me tell you a little bit about their programs and how it works. So they are a all virtual learning platform the first year for students. So for example, if you went into dental, you would go to Triton Central High School in the morning, and then Monday through Friday, you'd be in class on Zoom from 1 to 3, learning your dental curriculum. Your senior year, you would do 5 days of work-based learning at a dental facility somewhere in Shelby County or surrounding area that would be close to the student. The vet tech, you could start your junior or senior year. If you started your junior year, you'd follow the same rotation as dental. But if you started your senior year, you would do first semester of online learning and then second semester of work-based learning rotations. The cost is the more students you put in, the cheaper it is. We're not talking $200 a student. We're talking $2,500 to $3,000 a student. I spoke with another career center that is doing this yesterday. The director told me that they still receive that schools would still receive the CTE funding for it. You would still go on the Form 30A in the interns reports. But as I dug further into it, the 2 programs that I mentioned, dental and vet, they do offer CCMA, which we already have, and they also offer pharmacy tech. The dental, pharmacy, and vet tech are all moderate value. So we'll call it $400 a credit hour. You're taking 3 credit hours, you're upside down. And then there's not dual credits available right now either. I thought I knew what the answer was going to be, but I wanted to at least present it to you guys. So I'm still looking for different methods to try to think of different things to get other programs
I like the
involved
concept.
without expanding.
Concept's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Business math doesn't.
Yeah, right.
Business math doesn't, exactly. And then lastly, I am visiting C4 next Friday, the 23rd. And I've already sent emails out to directors about the idea of adding a restaurant here for next school year. So I'll be meeting with GHAC to see what they do. A couple of directors have already got with me on how they do different things. So it's at least exploring that idea, that possibility of where that might be.
Which one's C4?
Columbus. Yeah, based out of Columbus High School. So we're looking at that possibility too.
The existing kitchen.
We could, it's just where would we have
Place for people to enter and.
enter and so on. And those are questions that I've got that I'm working through. And that was one of the questions I sent out to directors. Is
This room.
yeah.
This room.
Yeah, I mean, this is it.
But so then you're gonna open the building to the general public during the day? We have to put some additional secure doors or boundaries or things in place.
I know there are some
For a
careers,
starting point, yes.
I know there are careers that I've spoken to that do it during the time when there's kids not there. So the break, that session break.
Very.
Yeah, we did it in college, we used up college.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
There's
the same
a-
kind of concept, but
There's
only certain hours they could come
Yeah.
and,
Yep.
yeah.
Might require a little bit of logistics.
Good work though.
Some
That's really good.
mood music on here and
There's some, I think.
you're open at 7 a.m.
There's potential.
I know a good breakfast crowd.
So trying to figure out then how would that work with the current students he has and how would we work with the schedules with the schools?
Great experience for the kids.
There's a lot of logistics to figure out. So, and then the last thing on the last page, I've always talked about increasing enrollment. I understand that the population is declining, but I still want to try to find ways to get kids here. What can we do? And then lastly,
Don't misinterpret it.
no, I know, I'm not misinterpreting at all.
What I think is the raw number doesn't give you credit for doing the work that you're doing. I think you're actually being much more successful
Yeah.
at attracting kids in than what a raw number indicates.
That makes sense.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, makes sense.
That's where I'm coming.
No, I get what you're saying. And then Todd's already mentioned it, but continuing to look for things off-site somewhere to add a Cosmo, add a restaurant. Where can we look to expand? You know, we know where we're limited space here, but where can we look for some different ideas?
Fiddlers.
And I know Todd and I've had some discussions about some people to contact, see what we can do. All right.
It's center behind it too.
So, there you go. That's what I got.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
thanks.
really good.
Sure. Good. That's all I got. We good?
All right.
You know, I forgot, we should have had a moment of silence for the Steelers when we got started. I'm sorry.
Of course. You know, it's not a very global game. I also look forward to Monday's game. You know, so, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be report.